All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast, where we always have Liberty lead. We have principles and they are uncompromised, right? So that's what we try to lead with here to the best of our ability. And joining me today is my good friend and awesome gunsmith, Blake, who I've had on here before. He was on some of the first few, and then I think you're on with Sean one of the
Yeah.
times, if I remember correctly. So it's awesome to have you back, man. I'll have you do an introduction, and then I'll go over some of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. It should be a great episode. So Blake, I'll give you the floor, bro.
Yeah, sure. Well, Jeremy, thanks for having me back. It's always good to be here. My name's Blake. First and foremost, I'm a father of two amazing young boys and a husband, and I love that job more than anything else. But secondary, I'm a gunsmith, and I do some forestry work as well. Those are kind of my two jobs. But I do enjoy talking about current events and random firearm related technologies and things like that. So, as always, we'll see where the conversation goes tonight, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. There's and as much as I hate to say it, there's a lot going on. But I think with this conversation too, it's kind of an area that obviously you and I have a pretty big interest in. And aside from all of the chaos with the Iran conflict, which we might talk about some of the warfare aspects, but there's a lot that goes on with firearms, just general preparedness, and a few of the other topics that I think kind of get overshadowed by everything every so often. And it's important to come back to those conversations, have the meaningful conversations, and kind of get a little nuance. I have to be super cheesy here. If you like what we're doing here, if I can actually remember what I'm trying to say, if you like what we're doing here, hit that like and subscribe. Share with whomever you think will find this informative. If you like our content, even if you don't like what I'm doing here, leave a comment down below and just let me know what you think. I don't ever shy away from any type of criticism or anything like that, so it's always good to hear from everybody. And without further ado, the conversation that we're gonna kind of cover tonight is going to be based around 2A. We're going to talk about the 2A aspect of things. We're going to kind of dabble a little bit into the MIC, or the military industrial complex. We're going to talk about a little bit of preparedness, and if we have enough time permitting, we're going to kind of get into that kind of the dead internet theory, which is something that has always been super intriguing to me. But I've started to notice, and I think several other people I've talked to have started to kind of notice, like, I think there might be something to it. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, 2A issues. Blake, I know when I was looking through quite a few different articles as of late, and we have our own stuff going on here in Minnesota. There's certainly quite a bit of issues taking place in Virginia. But it seems right now we're kind of in this weird position to where we're seeing some victories here and there, to where you're seeing some more ground won for 2A issues, where whether it's expanding constitutional carry, lowering the age to be able to buy, purchase, or carry a firearm, or just broadening that in general. But then it's like it almost seems like what we're seeing is kind of a reinforced opposition to that, to where you have places like Minnesota, Virginia. I think Michigan was just there's something going on there with Michigan, that they're trying to do some more firearm control or gun control, however you want to call it. I typically tend to call it more like people control, because that's that's at its core what it is. But I guess one of the things that I'm always curious about is, where do you kind of see this next year going for 2A issues? And do you think we're going to get a little bit more ground this year? Or do you think it's going to be kind of one of those things, given the state of how things are today and a lot of people's unhappiness with the administration and the potential changing of the garb coming up this next cycle, do you think we're going to take a hit there? Yeah, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, the Second Amendment thing is obviously near and dear to me because of my trained profession.
Right.
We've seen, like you said, some victories up in the Supreme Court recently.
Mhm.
There's been some good headway made. And from like the business perspective, this is where I'm also going to kind of complain too. Like they took away the $200 tax stamp, so yay, you don't have to pay the tax on something that was illegal in the first place, or arguably so based
Mhm.
on the Constitution. So it's like, hey, we're still gonna do the thing. We just don't want you to pay the extra pound of flesh.
Mhm.
Beyond that, you look at some of these draconian methods that are coming down on trying to actually limit what is construed as a black gun in the state of Minnesota,
Mhm.
or an assault firearm, or whatever you want to call it. It's this constant shifting of the goal line of what is and is not acceptable in polite society.
Right.
So, I do think you're going to see this be, from the political standpoint in the United States, a hot edge or hot button for the year.
Mhm.
Because obviously there are a lot of single issue voters that this is their issue on both sides of the political paradigm.
Sure.
As far as what I'd like to see, and I think that would probably have some of the best best chances in the Supreme Court, and best overall ramifications to the general public, is
Mhm.
going to be a recognition of constitutional carry. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think you should still get a class to carry. I think education is extremely important, and proficiency is as well.
Mhm.
However, the recognizing of that as a constitutional right to be able to bear an arm to protect yourself,
Mhm.
both concealed and or open, in all of the 50 states of this union, I
Mhm.
think is incredibly important. And I think we have the potential to get that done. And if we do see that happen, it's possible to be a watershed moment, because it could open the
Mhm.
floodgates for a lot of other things. So, momentum, I don't want to say it isn't on our side. As far as
Mhm.
the 2A concept goes, there's still going to be hurdles, and there always has been. But if you look back, over the course of, well, really 50 years, the amount of constitutional rights that have been recognized for carrying, and really Second Amendment rights in general, have kind of moved in favor to the 2A crowd. So, we do have a tendency to kind of get doomeristic, because we focus on the here and now. But if
Mhm.
you do look at the overall territory gained in the long run, the 2A crowd is, I would say, a net gain at the moment.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we should all be able to own Abrams, Apaches, Scuds, if you can.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I'm a firm believer, like radically, that if you can maintain it, you should be able to have it. And that goes all the way
Mhm.
up, baby. But that's not the world we live in, and there is, in a polite society too, you do have some,
Right.
I don't want to say compromise, because I'm not going to compromise on my Second Amendment core ideas.
Mhm.
But I do think that there is going to be a dance that has to take place for a while
Mhm.
until we see this come to where it really needs to end.
Right.
And the problem is in the political paradigm that we find ourselves in, and really just the projection of the next even decade of the course of human history is it even going to matter? I don't
Right.
want to be too crazy there, but in the same breath
Right.
is like, as much as 2A is a core issue of who I am and what I am constantly advocating
Mhm.
for, it also has become a lower threshold of importance because of some of the other events going on, like, going like what we were going to talk about a little later on. I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but preparedness.
Yeah.
Do I really care? And I do, because there's protection to it, but do I really care as much that I've got, an FA firearm that I can feed, or a family that I can feed because of a garden? There's a
Mhm.
tier of priorities now. And yes, I'm
Right.
going to continue advocating for the Second Amendment everywhere I can, but I do think we have some slightly bigger
Yep.
fish to fry at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Fair enough. And one of the things, and hopefully it doesn't put you too much on the spot, but it is something I just thought about as we're kind of mulling through the beginning here. There's a lot of discussion about FRTs, and I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but I think a lot of the issue with like the FRT discussion is a lot of people, I don't think fundamentally understand like what they do or how they work, but I think you also have a lot of people that are just like, oh, it's like they see it and they're just like, oh, that's an automatic weapon, and And it's like, well, mechanically, there's some caveats to that, right? And it's like there's obviously some distinct differences um, that come into play, and you and I probably have a good understanding of that. But in your mind, when and I bring up the FRTs because it is one of those high things that I feel like the ATF really has kind of a hard on for to some degree, but a lot of the states do too. Minnesota, they heard the scary things about the FRTs, and they're like, oh, we can't possibly allow these things to be in and around. It's the same thing with like the binary triggers, right? They hear these things or they see a video or something like that, and they're just like, oh, that's terrible. But yet none of these people fundamentally understand what they are. And I think one of the ways to kind of combat something like that is it's education. And so like an FRT essentially it's called a forced reset trigger. So if you've ever, well, I don't necessarily want to pull it up, but if you go onto something, a YouTube channel like Garand Thumb, for instance, he has a video of an FRT, and it gives the appearance that it's sustained automatic fire, but that's not the mechanism. So.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to jump in here, but
no, please do.
In essence, it's maybe for some of us older guys that are out there, because this is a dying thing for paintballers and such like that. Or you can even do it with an AK or something like that. It's a mechanism that was designed specifically for a bump trigger, in essence.
Sure.
So every shot is still a single shot. It's a single pull and a single discharge of the firearm. So it's not an open bolt or anything along those lines. But at the end of the day, just like you mentioned the bump stock and the FRT, and now they have the little Gatling cranks, and they're novelty items, right? Like at the end of the day, that's really what they are. Hey, let's go out and have some fun and make some party maker noise. Shoot a bunch of rounds because it's cool, it's enjoyable. Right. If you were to see one of these things used in an actual theater of combat, the guy would be dead, and then you'd laugh about it, right? Like someone running with their AR, just cranking the dang thing, or shooting, because the other thing is too, control's something to be said. And the FRT, you can probably get some really fast shots out of it. I can remember testing with a bump stock, and I could drain one of those Surefire, what were they, 60 round magazines, I believe, rapidly. You can dump them, and it's fun, but they're toy, and I think they're demonized because of that. And I think that's something about Second Amendment culture too, and every subgroup is going to have, I don't want to say the negative, but they're going to have that stereotype, right? And these things have a tendency to elicit like some rednecks down in the holler shooting these things and, drinking their Miller Lite in the middle of a Sunday and, whatever it is. There's a negative connotation that's in the eyes of somebody that doesn't understand firearms, when it's just a toy. So I think that's part of why they're demonized by the state and on the federal level. Again, as a radical Second Amendment proponent, I think they should be legal. I think full autos should be legal, and I don't think there should be a register for them. Quite frankly, as long as you're not a felon, because I think, and even with that, there's stipulations. As long as you're not a violent felon. If you're a violent felon, you have no business with any firearm, period. But if you're a felon because, like, I don't know, some taxes or maybe some white collar crime, I think you should still have your right. Like, I really do. I think it's, people argue today about the right to health care and the right to home. I'd argue that there's a bigger right to self-defense than anything else, because that's the buck stops here, right? When it really comes down and the chips are on the table, no one's else coming to save you. You should have carte blanche to be able to do as needed. And, I'm even going to go one step further. And again, I don't want to get too far off the rails, but radically castle doctrine as well. If someone comes through your house, I believe you should be able to do whatever to them. And I literally mean whatever, medical testing is allowed if they come in your house, with ill intent. Hey, you want a slave? Boom, there you go. There's your slave. I don't want to be a jerk, but your life is forfeit when you come into a man's castle. You threaten their family and that sort of thing. So, I really do believe that we should, get medieval on it to a certain extent. But I have a tendency to be, again, a little more extreme than most when it comes to this.
So I'm going to ride the lightning, mostly because it's, after all, I am the owner, purveyor, proprietor, if you will, of my podcast. I said I wasn't going to do it, but it's kind of a fun video that Grantham does. So I'm gonna do a solid here. It's really cool. For those of you that have never seen this, and I'm gonna show you guys, hopefully, my video buffers here. That'd be fantastic. Let's see. Of course,
these things do look fun, by the way. I haven't got a chance to share one yet, but they do look like a pile of fun.
Which is it?
Hey, no full auto in the buildings. It's not full auto. Okay, my bad.
Oh, dude.
ATF hates us.
So I'm not going to run it too long, but obviously you can see it's pretty dope. And mechanically, I think with the argument, a lot of people who have no idea what they're looking at is going to be like, oh, it's this. And it's just like, but it's not, though. And when you tear the guts out and you actually look at the mechanics of it, it is not, technically speaking, a full auto weapon. But that's what a lot of people see. They see that, and then they pull up something that does actually have like an auto mechanism, like a sear, right? And they're like, oh, that's the same thing. And it's like, it's not the same thing, though. So I think that's where a lot of people, it's easy and convenient for them to associate that. And it's like, okay, but there is an education point here, I think, right, Blake?
Well, yes. And that's something that I've run into in this industry, since day one pursuing this. And it's something that you're always going to have a hard time dealing with, is the education of both the customer and really just the average Joe. Come back to me when it's a real problem, when, people in the inner cities continue to be able to get giggle switches for their Glocks for $20.
Right.
Like that, there's a real issue, like a genuine issue. All right. And honestly, the people that are buying force reset triggers, they're mostly having fun with them.
Yeah.
They're not preparing for doomsday, as like a lot of people would like to point and paint them out as. But in the same breath, it's that way with everything. He was shooting a ghost gun with 62,000 rounds of fully semi-automatic nonsense. The thing is if you string a series of scary words together, you can scare the general masses. And that's the thing that everybody throughout history has always run into. It's just the general people. And it's nothing against those individuals. We all have our specialties. We all have the things that we go and we try to learn, and we can't know everything. All right. And I don't forgive somebody for not knowing what the difference is on some of the terminology of a firearm, because they just haven't spent any time dealing with it. Now, I'm happily here to help them, as are most people that, once you actually have a conversation. It's like some of my favorite conversations I've had about firearms are with people that are on the opposite side of the spectrum when it comes to what should and should not be owned in your own hands. And by the end of it, you go, hey, man, you were a lot more reasonable in the conversation than I thought. And I was like, because you find out whatever the hot topic is, when you have an honest conversation with people, typically there's a lot more in common than you realize, right?
Oh, for sure.
So same with firearms. It is the exact same way. So I think education is an important part. And we used to do that as a nation. There was a time where that was part of your basic education in school, in grade school, if not in grade school, in high school. You were at least had some proficiency in physical education with some kind of a firearm, some form of marksmanship. I can remember, then they phased that out when I was a kid, but I can remember as a kid in the back of my, I had an old Ford Explorer that I went to school with, and in the back of it, I had a shotgun to go shoot some birds with, or we had 22s to go plank, and they would sit out in the parking lot and all day long at high school, and then we'd go and shoot after school. That's just what we did. It was completely normal.
Right.
No one was scared when they saw a bunch of high schoolers getting guns together and jumping in the back of a pickup truck after school to go play, because that's what it was, right? I mean, we as Americans, don't even get me started on what the Boy Scouts is today compared to what it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
I know Scoutmasters that are in our area here that are great guys, and they run a fantastic program. But like when we started the Boy Scouts, it was because we were training the next generation of scouts, right?
Sure.
Like it had a purpose, like a genuine purpose. And we've lost these things as a nation, this pride. And that's the thing that really upsets me so much about the Second Amendment. It's intrinsic to what an American is. We were many people that came here and forged a new nation, and part of the fabric in which we forged it was this right to bear arms, and not just for hunting purposes, but in defense purposes, and when needed, in extreme acts of violence, both against foreign and domestic enemies. That is truly who we are, and some of that's been neutered out of us. So I don't want to get again too far off in the weeds, but culture behind the Second Amendment is imperative to who we are.
Right. Well, and it's our founders essentially came to understand it, and I just figured I'd point this out before we moved on. But they fundamentally understood the Second Amendment, not even necessarily as the Second Amendment, but a fundamental. It was fundamental in the first law of nature. So that the government can't grant you. It's not something that's given to you. It is part of your birthright and who you are. Not only just as an American, but just as a human being, right? You have this inherent right in you from birth, and nobody can take that away from you. Now, you can give that up, right? Like that's something you can relent to some degree to whatever authority, but you also, it's one of those things that really you can't necessarily just do away with. You can, if there's a will, there's a way, and we see this in different countries, and we see this in the way that people like find a weapon, right? It's not like if they can't get it one way, they're going to find it another way. So the point being is this is something I think that I agree with you. I think that we're going to see some some positive things hopefully moving forward in the next year, and I think that the constitutional carry aspect of all of the issues that we're dealing with would be a massive step in the right direction. We can only hope that continues to maintain a good positive pace, but it's yet to be determined. As well as I do that this administration is very questionable right now, and that's being extremely nice. But that being said, one of the conversations that I think is kind of a natural segue is when we talk about the MIC and when we look at the development of firearms or different products. And it's not like, what people should understand is it's not even necessarily just the ability to generate something like a firearm, even though we have an example for you tonight. But it's armor. It's things that can protect you. It's things that can be life-saving, right? But it's a broad scope and it covers a lot of ground. But I think the MIC is one of those things that a lot of people know an acronym, or they know in these big corporations. But do they really know, Blake, what the money changer situation is? And do they know what goes into it that isn't necessarily as good as I think a lot of people assume that it is sometimes? You want to speak to that here?
Well, I mean, that's a huge umbrella topic, right?
Yeah.
But if we look at it, I'd say, because based off of some conversations we had leading up to this podcast, I know one of the things that you'd like to touch on is the new XM7 or the M7, the new squad rifle.
And then their shorter M8. Yep.
Yeah, or the M8. Is that what it is? Is the M8? I thought it was the M7.
So they have the M7, and then they have the M8 that I think is coming out in a week or two.
Okay. For
the services. So
yeah, and that's based off the 6.8x51 or the 277.
Right.
So we can touch a little bit on that. And that's going to be your small arm side of the baby aspect of the military industrial complex. And then, it obviously gets much bigger, and how that all is structured is quite interesting, especially in telling with what we're seeing in the world right now. But why don't we touch, I guess, a little bit on the Fury real quick? It's interesting, and I don't want to crap on it too much. I know we've had our heated conversations, and it's interesting, right? But I do want to say, hey, there's some innovation at least, because their
Sure.
stagnation in especially small arms cartridges have been around for ages, and we're still, and even this new quote unquote round, like there's one aspect that I find interesting, and the rest is still stagnation.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, we haven't seen a lot of change for a long time in small arms cartridges. And what I have here, I actually had a customer, he's going on a hog hunt, and I'm actually really interested to hear how it does for him. But he just bought some 277 for us, and I actually have one of these little things right here, and it's kind of neat. It's a bimetal case. And basically how they do it here, I'm going to rip this one apart. So maybe I'll send you some pictures you can use later on, but we'll epoxy pour how these things are pulled. But to my understanding is this bimetal case, and I don't exactly know what kind of steel they're utilizing, but there's a type of a crimp washer that sits inside this by a rebated piece of the brass in the back here. And the reason that they're doing this in theory is to drastically increase the chamber pressures to try to be able to achieve around 3,000 feet per second in a, I think it's like a 11-inch barrel is what they're coming out with. Is that it's either 13
let me double check my notes here.
So 13 in the M7, and your M8 I think maybe is coming out with an 11.
Yep. So the M7 is a 13-inch barrel, and the M8 is down to an 11-inch barrel.
Yeah, and then they're going to be running that with a suppressor, so that's standard issue as well. So I know that they're trying to achieve that sort of speed, and I think they're claiming that it's only 20 foot of drop at like, and I looked at this beforehand and I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it's like 20 foot of drop at around 850 meters compared to about 30 foot of drop, or maybe it's 1,000 meters, but compared to about 30 foot of drop of like a 300 Win Mag. But you know, the difference is here is we're talking like 100 and I think it's a 13 grain versus like 185 grain, you know, so there's a big difference in kinetic energy and bullet size. And I don't want to crap on it too much because I like the ideas of being able to pick up the chamber pressures. That's kind of cool. But again, I think it's only part of the equation for what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And the thing that really bugs me about this, and I think this is where the crux of the matter is we already have platforms that accomplish this role just fine.
For sure. Yep.
You know,
can you also hold that up just a little bit closer to the camera? I had somebody that kind of wanted to see it a little bit.
Yeah, better. Absolutely. So that's the 277 Fury. This is the 150 grain variant of it. It's I believe it's a solid copper bullet. I want to say, I mean, it's basically, it's basically like a Sierra Match King bullet.
For sure.
You know, I've seen some ballistic use of this in some jelly, and it looked like it had a temporary wound channel, probably about the size of, I mean, it's a bit bigger than a basketball. It's a pretty good temporary wound channel on an 8x8 block. The final collapsed cavity was about the size of an apple. Great penetration. I mean, it's a capable round. The biggest issue is, though, to my understanding, is they were really trying to build this to be kind of, you know, because let's face it, the 5.56 is underpowered, right? We know it is. Sure. The 7.62 by 3.9 is a much better cartridge in closer combat and that sort of thing, and really in mid-range combat. And I think this was kind of that attempt to up punch it a little bit. But we have platforms out there like, honestly, the OT6, man, like most average, like, you know, granddaddy round, right?
Yeah, right.
Average infantry man's not shooting past 300 yards. You know, it just doesn't happen. And yes, engagements go beyond that. And we did see that in several of the desert theaters. But that's why you have a specialist. You know, that's why we've always had specialists. So
hence the DMR.
Yeah. You know, and then that's the thing is, I think really what this is, the cynic in me, it's Sig Sauer in the quest for more money. It's planned obsolescence, you know, because to my understanding, it's only going to have about 10,000 rounds in the barrel life, which is not terrible, but that's like 10,000 is probably getting sloppy. You know, I'm going to say realistically before accuracy falls off, and they're claiming it's a two MOA gun roughly. I've seen
what's MOA for those who don't know what MOA correlates?
Yeah, so basically you can look at MOA in a way of viewing how accurate you are at like 100 yards, for instance, all right? So like you're shooting within a certain group, all right, a minute over angle, so like a 1-inch group at 100 yards or whatever it may well be. And then that kind of expands as we go out in greater distances. And then I was seeing It was actually Garand Thumb's video. They were shooting 2.5 MOA at about 400 meters, which is pretty decent. I mean, realistically, for effectiveness for a battle rifle, like that's, pie plate, right? Like this is your most common area we're trying to hit. This is your vital zone here. So it's more than accurate enough for what we're talking about. It really is. It's not like we're long ELR, shooting. Like I'm sure this cartridge probably performs fantastically out of like a 700 or something like that. But again, there's a lot of things out there that kind of fill this role. So what I think is the bigger thing here, and this is where I think the issue is going to come into in the long term for the military in general, is, we're kicking I was seeing 80,000 PSI in the chamber. That's
in the
going to
M7.
Yeah, that's going to be.
And then they upped it with the M8 to,
I
think,
115,000. Is that real?
125,000 is the number that I've heard. Now, to be fair, so the most recent video, and I have details from TFB TV, because James Reeves did interview a guy, and I'm not going to out the SIG guy, but we are going to kind of discuss some of the claims, because I think I talked to you about this, and I was like, I don't know if it maths out, but if they're trying to get 125,000 PSI out of an 11-inch barrel. And one of the things that they did mention is in their weight reduction, which there's a number of things, they lightened the barrel slightly. And I know that's one of the areas that people are like, well, if you're pushing that much PSI,
that's a lot of heat.
And you're talking about lightening the barrel and a few other components. It's like, I don't know, man. And so like that's a lot of pressure. I mean, that's a lot of pressure.
You run into a lot of issues. I mean, if they're really getting up to 125,000 PSI in a chamber, especially like, so beyond the chamber end, it's a lightened barrel. All right. So we're talking probably pencil contour, because, they're trying to shave as much off as they can.
They claimed it wasn't pencil. But,
but one or two steps up is not much more, right? Like, so unless they're going in, like what would be smart is if they would have kept a little heavier weight and they went in and they actually machined in some heat sink fans on the barrel or something like that. Had some actual like mechanical means of dissipation for heat. Yeah. But what I'm more concerned about is like part wear, and this is why I was saying Sig Sauer in the quest for more money. Is these things are going to eat parts. They're going to and they're going to break. Like, and that's the thing is SIG has a tendency to kind of like too tight a tolerance build, right? And these are supposed to operate in from jungle condition, which why would you want a rifle like this in a jungle, all the way out to desert condition, which, okay, great. It's got distance. We need that. But then it's going to be finesse with the sand. It's going to have all sorts of issues. Like, and then it's supposed to operate in every theater in between. I don't see this as a do everything rifle like they're trying to sell it. It's very much a squad purpose rifle. Like, you've got a guy that fills a role. Maybe this is the rifle he wants to take. Yeah. But why not take a Garand? Or the modern variant, the M1A. Like there's old school platforms that we know have been tested for like almost 100 years now that are just freaking bulletproof. You could run through the muck, the mud, the dust, the freeze, and they're still going to run. Or let's do a modern cartridge that's trying to up punch where it shouldn't. And again, I don't want to shit on it too bad, pardon my French, because I like the innovation. I'm glad to see a little innovation in cartridge design, because it's needed. That's one thing our industry really suffers from, is stagnation. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind getting away from the 277 a little bit and kind of going into the greater stagnation of the military industrial complex in the West in general. If you're okay with that.
For sure. Yeah. And I will just say, just to kind of to push us into that direction, supposedly they're going to have a variant. I think, I don't know if it's for both the M7 and the M8, or if it was for one or the other, but I'm pretty sure they mentioned a 7.62 by 51, which to me is like, it's like, okay, so like, I understand that, but it's like, at that point, then why are we creating a whole new, like, I'm not saying, like you're saying, like, I don't mind the innovation, but at the same time, like we have the infrastructure for the 7.6251.
And that's okay. So let's say they're actually doing that. Cool. Let's take some M1As. Let's throw some new barrels on them that can deal with that kind of pressure. Let's try these bimetal cases in some trusted platforms. Like it doesn't need a whole new platform, you know. And I think the big thing is does this fit? Like, that's one thing I didn't read about. Is this an AR? Does this fit in an AR-15 mag? I don't think it does. It looks a little long.
I think. Don't quote me on this, but I think they had to do something similar to like a 30 cal mag.
Yeah, so then that means it's an AR
down to. They
so
were
it's an
reduced
AR-10
down to a
platform
20 round mag.
So basically, it's an AR-10, or it's like a step in between, is my guess.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like
so they're going to need all new magazines to feed all new guns.
They did make a 25 round magazine though, Blake. So that.
But again, this is okay. So this goes into the friggin' issue with the West when it comes to the mindset of weapons production. We want to do, gosh, fat Amy on everything from small arms to the nicest frickin' systems out there. Like, and that's just, gosh, like, okay, it's cool on paper, right? Like, you can stroke your ego all day long with how neat it is on paper, but like, does it work in the field? Like, holy shit, that's all that matters. And we always, the colloquial the West, right? Europe, the United States, like the axis, not the axis of evil, but the axis of good. You know, we always want to have the coolest, neatest, awesomest, most high-speed tech. And that's stupid. We need what works, right? Like, and 100%. this is I feel like a waste of assets, especially when, if we're being honest, we stand on the precipice of the next great global conflict, right? Like, why are we? Why are we retiring our Minesweeper fleet when we went and kicked a hornet's nest right next to the strait? You know, why are we changing our battle rifle when we're about to send the next generation of middle class love to its death? Why are we, building more fat Amy's with an I, with an F, with a GB variant after the name of it, when we could get literally 100,000 Sahid versions of our own suicide drones for the same cost?
Oh, for sure.
And this is the thing: is we're fighting the world's war of yesterday. It's still the Cold War and all these assholes.
100%.
Pardon my French. But what we need to do is we need to change and be light on the foot, increase our manufacturing capability of lightweight weapons platforms that work. And don't get me wrong, I disagree with the 5.56 being our main battle cartridge for small arms. I think it's a mistake. I think the 7.62x39 is a superior cartridge when we're talking about both mid-range and in ranges of operation for both kinetic kicking or knockdown force and really just kill capability. You know, that's one of the things that, with back to this 277 here really quick, is they want this for AP purposes, right? We have to have this speed so that we can shred body armor for the next generation of PLA body armor, the next generation of Russian body armor, whatever the answer is, right? Well, I was watching these copper bullets, which this is not obviously an AP round, but you know, they're doing a really good job at shredding through ceramic. But once they get caught by the fibers, they're balling up their energy, and it's a hell of a sledgehammer. Like, don't get me wrong, you're going to having a bad frigging day if you hit this, but if AP was the goal, okay, well, they didn't really. You know, why is supposedly the 113 grain variant or whatever it is supposedly the standard that's going to be issued that doesn't achieve what they're trying to do here? Yeah, it's hitting like a sledgehammer. Great, that's awesome. It's still probably killing a lot of people it's hitting. So it's not punching that armor. You know, something that I kind of I internally chuckle because you brought up 7.62x39 a couple times, and you know, you have a lot of people that are just like, oh my goodness, like. How could you ever give any credence to a round that originates from a country not us, you know? But it's like, look, like there's like I had watched a video, and I was bored, but it was talking about the DMR system and how you know, he was making the case of how the United States is, for whatever reason, not capable of making a refined DMR. Like a long-range DMR weapon. And he's like,
the Russians did it way back when, but they also weren't going for like, it didn't have to be pinpoint precision. It was a designated marksman rifle. It fulfilled the job, and they understood what the mission was, and they fulfilled that job. And and it's interesting because it's like you have to kind of give some credit when people get it right, and whether
100%.
it's like, look, the Dragunov, they have innovated an existing system, which they have several iterations. They've innovated the AK. Because they fundamentally understand, like, look, like, even if we experiment with stuff, we still need a workhorse that's 100% serviceable, that we can bring through generations and generations, that's going to work. And it does work. And, again, it's not denigrating the fact that, like, that we can't innovate. It's just, I think it's like, I agree with you about the 5.56, but it's like, we've had a couple things that probably would have worked very well. But it was one of those issues to where it's just like, oh, but let's try this, and let's try this, and let's try this. And then they finally come back full circle to this, like the M7 and the M8. And they're just like, well, maybe we do need to go back to a battle rifle system. And it's like, so we spent over 50 years walking away from the thing that we were eventually going to come back to. And all of the money, all of the R&D, all of the contracts and in the bureaucracy, and it's like, we could have saved ourselves a lot of pain and anguish had we just allowed the people that actually specialize in this stuff, that know what they're talking about. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Blake, and it might be bold of me to say, but the guys who made these things in their garage, maybe they know a little bit more about it than you do, you being the government, right? And it's like, maybe they were right all along, but instead we're trying to outlaw that type of innovation because, God forbid, we can't have Americans innovating in their garage, and because it's not controlled. It's like, yeah, but they actually make things that work effectively, and
that's
for
the problem.
a cheap price tag, relatively too, which is crazy.
but that's an issue. Right. Like, exactly. What we're talking about here are bureaucratic circle jerks, the eagle strokes, like, they want to have these expensive things. They want to have these projects that bring in more money because it pads their portfolio. We don't want the next John Moses Browning sitting in his original gun shop in Utah trying to build the 1911 or stitch the belts together for the Browning machine gun. That's not profitable anymore in the same way, and it's that pursuit of profit at all costs, like whether it's from the military industrial complex into just our everyday life and everyday mega corporations that we happen to run into. It's more profitable for them to be able to build a Fat Amy than all of those drones I referred to, because Fat Amy only costs, what is it? They say it's is it $300 million a plane, I think is what she is.
Minor details,
but realistically, she's probably 75 to 100 million to build, which means there's another 200 million to grease that's getting put into people's pockets every which way, and they don't want that to go away, right? Like you got to remember the poor son of a bitch on the battlefield's life means nothing. They're just a number, right? They're just a way to make more money. It's like, how do we get that gear into the field and have the bastard die faster so we can build more gear to do it again? And I hate to be as brutal as that, but it's the truth.
It's the truth.
We really are in that world right now. We're like, we are in the feigning ages, unfortunately, of a good time, I think. So, it's how it's going to be, and again, to give credit where credit's due, like we're talking about with the 7.62x39, you have to give credit to the Ukrainian military forces and how they have adapted to 3D printing intercept drones, and things like that, just with the technology they have available to us. And this is the thing that there are so many new technologies at the disposal of individuals, not just nation states and not even just like small acting groups, but like friggin' individuals now that are unbelievable. I just saw article the other day. I didn't read it, and I'm sure there's like some total BS in it. But dude just printed a surface to air missile at home with like some seriously basic parts for I think like $280. You know, like
sounds about right.
we have incredible additive technologies now. We have incredible reductive technologies now, incredible parametric softwares that allow you to design anything that you want to. If you want to go out and get a book and do a little bit of education and actually throw some elbow grease into it, yeah, hell, you can make about anything you want to. And I literally mean you can make about anything you want to. The thing that keeps us in check, right, is liberty-minded individuals. Like, how do you be a good liberty-based individual? You're capable of hyper violence, but you keep it sheathed. Right. Yeah. And that's kind of like that radical Second Amendment concept. Like it really, bam, like Mayor said,
I had to pop that one up right away. I just caught it and I was like, that's exactly it. Yeah.
And that's what it is. And like, if you look at like, all right, in the preparedness, which I know you want to talk a little bit tonight about kind of like where we are in the world, because, hey, man, we're hairy in the world right now. Well, decentralized nodes are really the key to survival in general. Like, let's say worst case scenario happens in the current crisis. All right. Gas wars begin. Like, I mean, what did I see the other day? I think Australia is claiming they're like a little over 2 weeks away from having a serious crisis of fuel. All right. You're looking at India. They're saying that they're like 70% short. They're thinking, I think is the number on fertilizer this year for putting in their spring harvest. You know, so we've got some very serious issues going on that, like, I hate to say it, but like shape up to Mad Max right quick if we keep on doing the stupid thing and blowing up our energy infrastructure. So, you know, I want to say, I think France today is at like $3 a liter for diesel, which is nuts, man. That's like over $11 a gallon. That's insane. So we're going to see these things continuing to exacerbate or accelerate rather. So I guess from the preparedness stance, whether it's, you know, take those lessons, it's got to be a decentralized sort of community that you're building, because if you go and get together, right, like let's say your family, your friends and all that, you're like, hey, things are getting really bad, so we're going to pool resources and we're going to do it in the local area. Well, now you've got the government looking at you, right? Because like, oh, what are these guys doing over here? I don't know if we want any of this, right? But if you just keep that network alive and those communication lines open, and you just do it in your own location, well, decentralized, right? That's how it survives. Everything survives through decentralization. Like, at least when you're dealing with the level of assets that us little puny punks have available to us, we have to operate in a decentralized fashion. You know, so that's the, you know, you grow in excess of tomatoes. Well, great thing, because, you know, Tommy down the road grew in excess of potatoes. So boom, we switch. Or if you're really smart, you grow tomatoes and you get both on the same crop, but that's a different story. You know, so but that knowledge base, that trading, that willingness to go back to an agrarian mentality of trade with a techno operation when it comes to like what you're developing. Like, I just read an article the other day, it was really fascinating. It was dealing with Spanish anarchists who had built a pistol making factory previous to World War II kicking off, and, you know, just with like the little crap that they had available to us. And they were basically making Walther clones. They were kind of cool, but they worked. Or like, look at the Liberation pistol that we produced in mass in the United States to help free France, right? Like, well, now those sorts of technologies are not to the point where you need like huge brick and mortar to do, you know. Johnny, 2 printers in his basement, can sit there and print out 2 guns simultaneously because he got 2 printers to run. Like, you know, we're in a very different timeline now. And I think that's kind of one of the big things that people are going to have to realize. It's like, you know, and we've joked around about it before, you know, and I do believe that we're heading towards it. But like, cyberpunk is not that far-fetched anymore. Like that level of like, hey, the world's changed. You know, we're getting close to being able to plug into the net. We're starting to see, like, I don't want to say emergent intelligence, but we are getting large language models that are at least doing some pretty bizarre things that are eliciting behavior that weren't necessarily expected. We're on a pathway to really changing the whole human technology paradigm in general. You know, and I'm a firm believer of like, maybe it's time for a modern day Luddite movement where like, hey, reached a pretty good level of technology. Maybe let's tone back for a minute. Like, let's stop upgrading for a second here.
There's there's an interesting point, and it's kind of actually departed from the conversation, but I think it applies across the board. So I'm a gamer, and you know, I know you like your game series too every so often, and I think there's a lot of people out there that enjoys the game every once in a while. But one of there's a YouTuber I watch who made a point because it was something to do with like the DLSS and like a graphical thing for gaming. And, you know, just in the first minute of the intro, he was like, they have gone so far beyond, like, they've gone so far ahead in technology that they're essentially erasing or completely forgetting everything that worked. So all of these core components that you would see in like the old school video games, so where like everything worked really well, like you hardly had a game that was like super broken, right? He's like, you're having new generations of people that don't actually fundamentally know the core foundations of how this tech worked and how everything used to work and how all of these things came together so seamlessly. And I sat there and I thought about that, and I'm just like, dude, like that is so much of just everything in general. Like we're trying to go so far beyond that we're now forgetting to some degree. We have, whether it's manufacturing or whatever the case is, towards just like you have people that are being trained. And if you ever had to troubleshoot something because you have a failure here or a failure there, you have generations of people that don't even fundamentally know how to do that. And if you have to find a workaround for a while temporarily, how are you going to do that? And I don't see that that's any different when it comes to firearms. Like they're trying to push so far beyond, like, and again, we're just talking about it. There is nothing wrong with innovation. You have to have an entrepreneurial, innovative spirit to go beyond, right? But when you make that every portion of your society and you leave nothing behind of things that fundamentally work, that fundamentally function, that fundamentally exist and are kind of this really well-oiled machine, and then all you have is this thing that works half the time and works maybe somewhat well, but doesn't have consistency, then you have to kind of step back and evaluate, like, well, what do we have left then? We have a handful of these things when we could have had a huge backup or a reserve of this. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, like, when you look at it from a preparedness standpoint, you know, we should still be learning like kind of these hard skills, right? We should still be learning a lot of the fundamentals, a lot of, you know, whether it's basic things like woodworking or machining or something that is going to help us kind of get along, because that's where you get some of that innovation from in the very, you know, at the very basic level, and you have the ability to remain self-sufficient. So if you have a situation where, oh, you can't get parts anymore for your guns for a while, how are you going to do this? Well, if you're self-sufficient enough and you understand some of the older ways, you might be able to do these things on your own. You might be able to build a screw, or you might be able to build a piece of mechanical part that's going to keep your tractor running, right? And so innovation's always great, but when you start to go so far to the point to where people are not remembering some of the fundamentals. And we talked about the fact that I think at some point people will figure out how to do this stuff again, because I believe in human resilience. But man, that gap really seems to expand the farther down we go. And, you know, when I look at some of these programs, you know, like the MIC, that or like what the MIC does, and I look at the M8 rifle, right? And we had talked several times previous to this about the M7 and the M8. You have people that clearly are out there to make money, and they're making claims. They're, you know, to where you look at something, an 11-inch barrel, it uses this round, it's boasting that it has good accuracy. Well, matter of fact, let me go per what they're saying. alleges that they went shorter. Accuracy, and this is for the M8, accuracy actually got better with the shorter barrel. And from the M7 to the M8, it's 1 MOA better, which really raises a question. Well, like, why would we use the M7 then at that point? And in regard to, but that was also in regard to their house ammunition and not the U.S. military's ammunition. And then you have a disparity to where the civilian version of the M7 has a 2.5 to maybe a 2 MOA. They didn't specify what range that was at, which leaves a lot of questions. And then if you go to the 11-inch version, which is the M8, 1 3/4 MOA, and then they boast it's an 800-meter gun that is alleged to perform as well as a normal 20-inch rifle. And so that's what I'm saying is, like, you have these people that I think knowingly are just trying to, they're pushing this, as you said, like obsolescence. I think they're just hammering crap out there, and it's just obscuring so much of all the things that we practically know work. And it creates this whole situation where it's like, well, if we're not going forward, then we don't want to hear about it. It's like, yeah, but you're not going forward though. I mean, am I wrong here, Blake?
Well, no, I think it's and like you touched on, it's in everything.
Yeah,
a little bit, not necessarily in the MIC, but I just saw an article the other day that the Gen Z is the first generation in American history that has a net decrease in intelligence from the previous generation. So we've seen the high water mark, right? And we're starting to see them drop. And you can see this in really any legacy technology, and the younger generation's trying to utilize it. Like, gosh, I saw a video the other day, and I hope it's a joke, but it was a guy going, "Hey, I didn't know you could use AI for this." And he held up his phone to a standard clock, and the AI told him the time, and it was 2
oh my
hours
gosh.
off. And the guy was like, "It's 6:20" when it was 8:20. And I'm like, man, are we really there, right? Like, are we already outsourcing our thinking so much? And I hate to say it, but like from the reporting I'm seeing from other parents and some of the stuff I've been reading, like actually I was just listening to Sargon and Cod the other day, and he was talking about this. And it's crazy how 40% of Great Britain students under the age of, what is it? It's 8, I think, are illiterate. And like to the point where they don't even know how to like use a book at all. Like
it stresses me out.
A technology they can't interact with. We're seeing similar things here in the States. So if we have this world where we've achieved a decent level of technology, we've some amazing technologies that have really improved the quality of life across the board, extended life. I mean, if you look at like how even the poorest of us live today compared to like, let's go with like a 12th century nobleman. Holy crap, you're doing pretty awesome. So I don't want to like undersell the world that we live in today, because it is pretty amazing. But now we're getting to the point where people don't care anymore. They don't want to educate. That's good enough. Right. So like millennials have an interesting thing where they're already referring to us as like legacy technology walkers, basically, where we can use the new and the old because we have that training, but that training doesn't exist on either side of the gap. So what happens in the long run, I don't know. We saw this. It was very evident during COVID and post-COVID where, and I pisses me off all the time. I like cheddar brats. I go and I get a 6-pack of cheddar brats from the store, and they open nicely. And now the damn things are sealed too much every single time, and they're a pain in the butt to open. And it's like a really small, like inconsequential thing in life. Like, why is he complaining about it? But what it is it's because somebody retired during COVID that had a pension, had a good job, had been there for 30, 40 years. They had the understanding of, hey, instead of sealing this bag at 127 degrees, we do it at 126 and a half because it seals, it opens up nicer, but it still achieves the freshness we're looking for. Well, that knowledge wasn't handed down. Okay. And then we had this guy that maybe he wasn't fully trained and ready to take over that legacy position and how to run that legacy piece of equipment. So he does the best he can. And I get it. You do the best you can. That's what you do, but you didn't have the training. And that's not a fault of you. It's not a fault of the guy before. It's a fault of the system that we're working within. And what happens is over the generations, this keeps going down. And we keep putting a Band-Aid on it. And we keep just slapping some gum in the line. And next thing you know, it starts to break down. And then a cascade effect happens. And then your Johnsonville brats are gone. You get Johnsonville mush. It comes in a tube. You can scoop it out with a spoon. But you want it in broth form? No, we don't know how to do that anymore. Yeah. And I mean, I'm being hyperbolic here, but that's how we're heading, right?
We're pretty close to a build your own broth. I feel that.
So it's I'm afraid that's where everything's going. That's why I'm an advocate for learn your skills, man. Learn how to grow some food, how to can it, like how to kill an animal, how to gut it, how to hang it, how to process it, because you're gonna need it. And it doesn't necessarily mean, like we've talked about many a times before, from Mark's podcast to your podcast, it doesn't matter. It's like, just know some basic skills and know some other people that know some shit you don't know. And like, let's try to like get together as a community, because I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think it's good. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'm starting to get February vibes of 2020 again. And I don't like that.
You know, and I've said this several times. I'm pretty sure I've said this a number of times just in our, communications. But I think one of the best ways to preserving liberty is having the ability to subsist and exist on your own. And when I say on your own, yes, you may go through a time to where it is just you and your family, but eventually when you can have a community of people, having the ability to subsist and exist on your own as a community with other people is going to really augment your ability to retain your liberty and to be able to exercise your rights in a way that is going to keep you free. Right. And you're going to be aware. And a lot of that comes with education. I think education, well, it's not necessarily, maybe it is to some people. I don't know if I would categorize it as a skill, but along with skills, having a good fundamental basis of education is so vitally important. And when you look at preparedness and the way that, all of us prepare, we all have a lot of, like a lot of us probably have food. A lot of us have some medical. A lot of us have, other just different things that are necessary for us as individuals and our family individually. But when you have the ability to defend these things, when you have the ability to work with others, to trade, to share skills, to build things, to fix things, to do all these things, it keeps you in a state that makes it hard to control you. And that in and of itself is an inherent benefit of preparedness. Is how I feel. And with that, when you look at the dispersion of information, for instance, and perhaps this might be a reasonable area to kind of segue to the back end of our episode. When you look at information, knowledge, interaction, a lot of it is digital these days. I don't know if you've noticed it, and perhaps you have, and I posit this to the listeners as well, but when I'm on something like X, for instance, right? Man, there's a lot of things that I see going through there, and you go under and you see the comment section under a post or whatever, and it's like, there's no way that these people are real. And so I think a part of preparedness is also like going outside and seeing people, because you'll start to see kind of the daylight that's occurring to where it's just like, dude, like, I'm not convinced that a huge portion of the people that I see on these platforms are even real. Well, and it's not quite to the level of the gal who is on the plane tour. It's just like, that guy back there is not real.
It might be further than that, dude. So I saw this, like, what was it, like 3 months ago? And don't quote me on these numbers. Please do your diligence, go look them up. But I want to say like 45% of the traffic on the internet now, on at least your mainstream sites, are bots, which is nuts. It's basically a coin flip if you're talking to a human or a bot. And like, okay, well, what is a bot? I've seen a lot of videos of, over in a lot of Asian countries, a lot of Chinese areas, where they go in and they set up these rooms or factories where they either take the chips out of the phones or they hook the whole phones up, and it's just banks and banks and banks of cell phones promoting content and things like that. So like there's a financial aspect to it, you know.
They're like bot farms, no?
Yeah, and that's what they call them. They call them bot farms. But then there's
Yeah.
also a certain level of the, and I don't know what the numbers are on this. I'm imagining it's significantly smaller because we haven't hit this threshold yet. But there's going to be a certain amount of those comments that are created by LLMs, large language models. Okay. Now they're not necessarily free to do their own thing yet, but people can employ agents, is what it's called, into these regions, and they can start talking. So like one of the most famous ones, but it's very misunderstood, is Moltbook, which is supposedly an artificial intelligence social media network. It's a total load of crap. It was set up by, I want to say, a guy out of San Diego. I can't remember his name. It's a few other people. But basically what they're doing is they're creating agents that are talking to each other with pre-written scripts, and they're trying to sell it as this new thing because there's a portion where it's called Rent a Human. But then if you go there and see, like, we talked about it, I love it, you called it future collaborators. You know, on that site, most of it is just like only fangirls wanting to sell their feet pics. You know, it's not a genuine thing yet, but we are seeing the development of the infrastructure of these things. We are seeing some of these agents using the open net and starting to sell products and to talk there.
Sure.
You know, so more and more is being overtaken. And I've seen some estimates by, I think it was the end of 2027 or the end of 2029. I know it was an odd year. They were saying they thought that about 90% of the traffic on the internet would be artificial.
I've heard that. Yep.
You know, and if that's the case, then okay, well, that's really interesting, because the counterculture, like not the counterculture of the 60s by how it's usually used, but like the counterculture of the early internet, right? It was very much a very libertarian, very freedom based. Like we want to just talk about whatever we want to talk about, do whatever we want to do, sell, buy whatever we want to do, and that's become extremely corporatized. So there's going to have to be like a new net, I guess, if you will, or there's been a lot of people that have been advocating like an internet bill of rights. But I just don't know if it's going to happen, you know, and this is why I was kind of, I used the term, you know, we're living in the fledgling cyberpunk world now. Is, you know, you could make an argument with what's going on the global level right now and some of the games that are being played that like we might be seeing the beginning of the deaths of nation states, and out of those ashes, I would argue, would rise megacorps, you know, and we're already seeing like corporations in a lot of ways are calling a lot of the shots on the global scale right now. And we definitely have obviously nefarious government actors and things like that. Like it's top to bottom, and it's always going to be that way. But it seems like we're moving into a much more digitized, corporatized world, you know, and not really a world I want to see, but it does kind of have that feeling. And I think, you know, what better way to demonstrate that than what just happened? I mean, how many billions of dollars have we spent in the beginning of this war in Iran? I mean, it's I had heard by day 10 we had spent more money. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but we had spent more money in those 10 days than it cost to build every single mile of high-speed rail that China's built in the last 25 years.
That's what I've heard.
You know, so that's a significant amount of coin, right? Well, who's the real benefactor of that? It's not the United States, because we're the purchaser of that, and you know, we got to go spread our freedom. But you know, it's your Lockheed Martins, it's your Boeings, it's these mega corporations that are tied to the military-industrial complex that are the pillars of the military-industrial complex that are really making the money. So then, you know, and I do want to bring this up, and I meant to bring this up a little earlier, but why are we burning through our arsenal so quick? I mean, we're cannibalizing our air defense network across the globe right now for this combat. So are we just that desperate? Are we that low on inventory and we're just freaking out? Or are we about to unveil something new and we're just getting rid of old stock? Like, there's not a lot of logical things that you can explain away the massive depletion of the weaponry that we have already. Like, wow, one hell of a shock and awe campaign. Okay, great. Can we follow it up with can we sustain this? Can we maintain this? You know, Singer sewing machines isn't making friggin' Tomahawk cruise missiles. And until
that we know of anyways.
Until we start doing that, you know, well, we don't really should probably not be shooting off $200 billion more of our munitions. It's maybe a bad idea. But then going back to what, you know, because I got a little off trail of where you wanted to go with like the dead internet kind of concept is, well, now let's look at that in the perspective of how one's narrative's controlled. Okay, well,
the perception aspect.
Yeah. Okay, so LifeLock, not LifeLock, sorry, Meta just patented a new technology that basically recreates the individual that was on social media completely with its own artificial agent. So, like, let's say, you know, you have a loved one that went off to war, all right? And I think this is going to be one of your more nefarious purposes, and I think there's a more nefarious underlying purpose of this technology in general, but let's take it on the surface level, for instance. Okay, you got a loved one that went off to war. He died, all right? But they don't want those numbers out. They don't want to admit to how many people died. Well, okay, we just take his entire life on social media and we upload it, and we take everything he's ever put online and we feed it into a language model and outspots or spits a decent, you know, version of you that continues posting on your social media. That manufactures pictures of vacations, interactions with family members, sending of private messages. And unless the discerning mind is looking closely, that person went on living. Because I mean, what is a life in today's day and age? Well, for most people, it's what's digital. It's what we're talking on right now. This medium that we use, it's the internet. And if you can continue to keep up that view on the internet, well, then great. Okay, you know, that person's still alive. So now let's take it to the deeper level of what this is. So now, like Meta, for instance. Okay, well, every single person that uses it is an income stream for them. It's how they develop capital. And when someone dies or logs off the account, they're stopping to lose a little bit of money there, right? So they can continue having people post well into the future, but then it continues to bog down the internet. It continues to have a self-feedback loop of dribble that means nothing and is completely manufactured, thus degrading the quality of real life to those around it that are consuming this poison, you know, bleeding out into our reality where everything is becoming AI slop, everything is becoming false. And then you break down these mental barriers that people have had and how to protect themselves in crisis situations like this. And next thing you know, it's saying everyone's just freaking short circuiting, you know, and it's to me, at least, it seems like that maybe is part of the goal. It's kind of, again, why I'm going back to like a technocratic Luddite movement. Like, hey, we've got some good tech. Let's keep her at. Let's not go too far down that path.
You know, I had mentioned to you, I think it was a day or two ago. I had this weird sneaking suspicion that, you know, just in seeing, and again, I 100% the idea of dead internet, right? Really in being able to curve and chart the course for the type of information those in, you know, those in power or those in some position might want to be able to use to curate a perspective, if you will. I had thrown out the idea that I believe that when you look at some of these profiles and you look at some of their responses, it's not just the response that's very bizarre, but also I don't know why, but there's a red flag that always pops up for me that I feel like some of these profiles are backdated. And I think that kind of feeds into, to some degree, you know, that carryover of like, if you have a loved one, right? Like, it's like they never went anywhere. I think I think that there is also that situation where I feel like we have the technology. It's this weird thing to where, much like our stockpiles, I feel the same way in a way about our technology, to where I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't think I'm very skeptical about the fact that like we make these claims about how we can read a license plate from space, but then we can't happen to find, you know, a certain guy that did something or whatever. I don't know. I don't buy it. But I do think that we do have enough technology to where, with the systems we have and algorithms and the ability to manipulate the online perspective and the content and all of that, especially if you have a large portion of the online population that's not even real, that you would be able to go in and backdate a profile. So a profile that may have turned up in like 2022 or 2023 or 2024, you could backdate that to, say, I don't know, 2013. And you could interject something like all the world events up to that point, and then it would be able to synthesize something like that. Now, that's getting a little bit, you know, in
I was-
speculation
I
territory.
was gonna say, I don't want to pretend like I know if that's feasible or not. Like as
Yeah.
far as backdating, like the power to be able to actually go through that. It's not like the internet's built on the blockchain, or hasn't been
Right.
for a long
Yeah.
time, I should say. Like post dating, some things would be quite difficult, but we are running into a realm where at least fabricating the evidence to make it look plausible is there.
Yeah.
And how many people are going to go beyond the surface level of something.
Mhm.
And that's really the thing that you got to realize. You don't have to be
Right.
perfect with it. You just got to be good enough.
Yeah.
You need about 90% of the population to go, yeah, that sounds about right. And
It's gotta
honestly,
pass
like,
the
not to
sniff
be a
test.
dick, that's not that hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, we're pretty trusting things at the end of the day, even if it's not merited. But you know, that's the thing. Like, if you want to get like super conspiratorial to it, is, you know, with this technology, with a sufficient amount of data centers and a sufficient amount of power generation done, you could kill half the planet and no one would know if you played your cards right. Like, that's kind of crazy to say, but like, you could fabricate a good portion of the global population. Mm-hmm. And if you did it right, and you know, I mean, because right now, like, your two biggest onlining groups is India and Africa. Okay, that's your largest, and it's really the last two large demographic chunks that are onlining onto the internet right now. You know, so by the end of it being done, I think it's estimated by around 2035 or something, you know, we'll have about 7 billion people online. That's just how it's going to be. And holy shit, you think the internet's bad now? Just wait until everybody's on it. Like, it's changed drastically, even just since India started onlining. Like, it's completely changed the topography of the internet. Mm-hmm. But if you can go on and fabricate that, I mean, heck, what's to say you can't kill 3 billion people if you control all of the data centers and the AI models, and you're actually able to convince it? I mean, like, you can fabricate reality in essence. Who cares if it's real or not? Like, so many people believe what's in front of their eyes on this little screen here. Like, for as far as you know, like, technology really is getting to the point where, like, if you never met me or Jeremy in person, you got to question if we're a real person. Even sitting here talking like we are right now, like virtual tubing has become really quite good, you know, and it still has some of the uncanny valley. I mean, you can still kind of check it out, but like, look at the kerfluffle that's been happening with BB.net and Yahoo over the course of the last week and a half. Like, there are very legitimate points that have been brought up about videos with him in it that are very clearly AI. You know, so at the very least, you can make an honest speculation that something's going on here. You know, and the problem is when you can no longer trust your eyes. Well, I mean, the world is ripe for manufacturing, and that's, I think, what we're really seeing, like, with the end game goal of like the dead internet theory with these data centers, with the AIs. I shouldn't say the end goal; it's one of many facets of this machine. But I do think reality shaping, you know, being able to control the crystal ball, that's a very, very large part of this machine.
You know, and you've heard me say this before. I think there is a point to where technology begins to get so much that I think that, and it kind of goes back to like the old ways of doing things, and we've talked about this a few times, but I think technology eventually is going to get to a point to where the ability to circumvent something or to bypass something with the old way of doing something, I think will become more and more relevant, especially when you start looking at something like the dead internet theory, if you will, and take, you know, people could take that for what they will, whether it's theory, whether you think it does fully exist or whatever the case is. I leave that to the viewers. But the point being is, something as simple as like going out of your home and getting into society and talking to people and having actual conversations. I can tell you already that just in doing that alone, you're fracturing the perceived reality that they want you to see. Because when you go out and you talk to somebody and you have a conversation, whether it's about firearms, whether it's about economic issue or whatever the case is, I can tell you from my experience that we're a lot closer on issues as individuals than we are farther away. And I think that the digital realm has been very successful in convincing a lot of people that that's not the case. And when you can actually go out and, as they say, touch grass and talk to people and have the conversations, you start to realize that, oh, like this is the real world. This is what actually exists. It turns out I don't actually hate my neighbor, but that's the perception they wanted to create. And I think, even just going back to a realm of preparedness, right? It's like, what a simple way to remain aware and prepared by just going out and getting to know your neighbors, getting to know the people in your community, just to having basic conversations. Maybe it's an extra little conversation you have at the coffee shop or whatever the case is, and you'll find out that most of the people you thought you hated or didn't like or didn't agree with, you have a lot more in common with than you realize. It's just interesting, and I think that at some point we're going to get so far ahead that it's going to, and I think we're already starting to see a regression to a certain degree towards like, no, like the tried and true methods are tried and true for a reason. Doesn't mean they're 100%, and it doesn't mean they're always right, but it does give you a basis and a foundation to work from. And I think that's where I get some of my optimistic realism or my hopeful realism from, is the fact that we as human beings are incredible creatures, but also we have the ability to go outside of our door, away from this digital world, and find the information we seek and to learn and to do all of these things. So we essentially build or break the cages that we have around us to many degrees, if we're willing to do that. I don't know, maybe that's my hopeful spin on something, but I feel like you have to at least look at it from every aspect, you know what I'm saying? Or you have to at least have perspective when it comes to these things. So as far down the rabbit hole as we could go as a society, I think we also have more than just one direction to go from, if that makes sense.
Well, absolutely. You hit it on the head. Like we were never meant to spend time in a space like this. That's
right.
Not how we were programmed, right? We were programmed to hunt and fish and gather berries and sleep under the stars. Like, if you want to talk about really like who we are anciently, that's what we are. It's only been the last couple generations we've spent time in this sort of a space, this not physical yet turns into somewhat of a physical space. It's been both the greatest thing and the worst thing possible for both the power structures and the general populace. Depends on how it's used.
Right.
But I do think it's high time a lot of people start stepping away from this and getting back into reality, because I think that to use the parlance of our time, the technology detox is probably a good thing for a lot of us. I've spent quite a bit of time just focusing recently on my family, on what I'm doing in my personal life, and just keeping my nose to the grindstone. And it's been some of the healthiest time of my life. It's been good. I haven't really watched the news for months and months and months until this kerfluffle started off, because you can't not pay attention to it, because this one's too important. As much as I hate to say it, it really is too damn important. But I think that really we all need to start looking at like what's around us, what tools we have available, whom we have available that's of like mind, and if you haven't already, start building that ship. Not saying you're going to need it, but if you need it, you want it.
Right, exactly.
But setting down the phone, not consuming news all the time is important too, man. Like, it's healthy, and really our psychological well-being, I can't stress how important that is. Because we've all been under a lot of stress. You can argue for longer than this, but let's put a date on it. Let's say it's that February of 2020 that I talked about earlier, that beginning of the COVID times, the changing of the zeitgeist of our age, right? A lot of people have been operating under stress that the human body was never intended to deal with for that long. There are people that can deal with it just fine. They'll eat it for breakfast. There's a lot of them, right? But there's a lot of them who can't too. And we're starting to see people crack. So I think like taking that time to try to get your mind right, to you know, sit back and go, what are my priorities? And like if shit got really bad, what am I going to do? And I don't mean what am I going to do? Like these are the actions I'm going to do, but like, what are my goals? Like if shit's gotten bad, if the fans said like, you know, is it protect my family? Is it to try to go and meet up with other people to go do something about it? You know, what are the goals in that situation? And having some introspective beforehand and like really realizing where your priorities are before that happens is probably a pretty good idea, I would think. Anyway, now I'm starting to ramble and
it makes a lot of sense, man. And you know, I think we can start to bow tie this. If you're cool with it, we'll go through a couple of the comments because a lot of people or there's been quite a few comments and I think there's some good points here. But I do want to say before we do that there's always a clear pattern and usually if you could start to figure out what these patterns in history are, you'll be able to get at least a good temperature of where things are going to go. We're seeing a pretty concerted effort in the want to control the narrative, to control what people say, who you can criticize, who you can't criticize, who gets the, you know, if somebody goes against the grain, then like I think it's important to also see how people denigrate or lift these people up, how they treat these people, because that is something that eventually, once you reach a certain point with speech and the ability to speak freely and the ability to air your grievances and to have your opinions and all of this, once you have a certain degree of control, then it almost always and inevitably and invariably goes to the arms next. And one of the things that I've put out is, you know, whatever the next conflict is that really gets egregious, that really spools up, really out of control, I think you're going to see not only a much tighter control of narrative, and I don't know, maybe it could be this one, I'm not sure, but with the tighter narrative and you get dissent, what are they going to label the dissenters? And then what excuse are they going to use to justify the control of arms? And that's something I've thought about quite a bit because it's like, oh, well, we can't have people saying this. We can't have people, you know, going out and going against the grain of whatever the administration or the government says. So then you have this situation to where it's like, oh, well, they're deemed to be dangerous only by way of their words now, so we can't trust them with arms. And it historically, it only just expands from there. So I think it's a pattern that's worth following and looking out for, because we are in a very weird situation right now to where it's new to a lot of us, but it wasn't new to our founders and it wasn't new to the generations shortly after our founders. So we have to learn how to navigate this. And while I'm digging up some comments here real quick, Blake, if you wanted to kind of ping off of that, and then I'll set us up here for some final comments. So,
well, you know, what even to say, right? Like it's we do find ourselves in an interesting time. We've found ourselves in an interesting time for a long time. Like the historian in me is just eats this up, but like the father in me is terrified about the future.
Yeah.
You know, so it'll be interesting to see. I've said everything really tonight that I kind of want to on this point as best as I can. I don't think I need to add any more words to it other than just be ready and try to be your best, most honest self, because, you know, that honesty goes a long way. It really does. Like, try to be who you want to meet in that world. I guess, yeah. Well, anyway.
So there's a lot of people, a number of people that are just welcoming you back. I'm not sure if you saw that in the very beginning. Learn me something, David. You know, they're just like, hey man, good to see you again. And I have to agree, it's great having you back. Mayor.
Sorry, I've been kind of busy with the family stuff recently, guys. But
it's
good to be back. Oh, actually, quick little one, if you don't mind me doing a side note, but
Yeah.
the oldest is turning 2 here shortly.
Oh boy,
He's talking like crazy. He's having a lot of fun. He actually went ice fishing for the first time today, which was kind of
nice.
cool. Yeah, and the little one is he's starting to cut teeth, but he's sleeping decent at night. So we're finally starting to get our groove, which is good.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
I'm super excited to see kind of that journey unfold for you guys. Because just from everything you've told me, you got some sharp ones on your hand there. So that's good. Mayor was putting out, still supporting FPC along with some other Liberty organizations. They do a lot of good work. I think when you find some of the diamonds in the rough, they're worth supporting. Always putting a little bit more weight behind some of these groups that try and give it their honest go is better than just sitting there and not doing anything. I don't know if how much you are familiar with FPC. I would assume you probably know a little bit about them, Blake.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah. They get a little spicy on the interwebs, but Firearms Policy Coalition is pretty decent. We have the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus here, and they seem to do pretty decent. They've won a fair bit, so I think it's worthy of supporting people who at least give it the honest go. Is kind of my opinion. So, and it's always easier to overcome an issue when you have people together than it is by yourself. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. I don't know if you're ever into airsoft or paintball, but I was an airsofter myself.
So I used to do a lot of paintball, and I know why that question got brought up too. And you're right. I've seen it. Paintball's dying. Airsoft's taking over, and for good cause. And for good reason. I used to love playing paintball back in the day, but man, it's an expensive sport. So
I think both are really good for just getting out, spending time with people, but also like you can purpose it, like it's not a one-to-one, but if you do it right, you can repurpose it for a little bit of training, and it's not bad. And that's something I think we've seen slowly but surely over the years, where there's more acceptance of that. I like this one by Mayor also. Black Guns Matter, stop gun hate. Let's see. I forgot. So I think Mayor also was talking about the 7.62. I think that's in reference to the 39. I could be wrong, but we can still get it here. There's some companies that domestically manufacture it, and I think you can still get a fair bit of like the surplus. It's just there were certain countries, and I think there are still certain countries that you can't buy it from, but it's still relatively available. I think the Biden admin tried to do some stuff with that and had some relative success, but it wasn't enough, I think, overall to really impact the use or the shooting of the 39. I don't know what you've seen on your end, Blake, but it didn't really seem to impact a whole lot, to be honest.
Everything's been kind of screwed up with ammo for a while anyway. It's still available. The import stuff's getting tougher, especially with the war going on in Ukraine.
Right.
The 7.62 by 39, though, it's a good round. It really is. It's kind of fills the role of the 5.56 I wish it did. It's kind of why the 300 Blackout came out. But again, without getting too far into the weeds. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then there was one by Cheddar Cheese who was talking about Kentucky Ballistics shot a level 4 plate. And I believe they were I believe this was in reference when we were talking about the 6.8.
The 277. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. Which I mean, one end of the same. The 277 6.8 by 51. They're same cartridge, but it'll, from everything I've seen, it will shred the ceramics, but then the fiber catches it, but it'll put you on the ground. It's going to break ribs. Yeah. It's going to cause internal bleeding. Like, it's still hitting like a sledgehammer. And that's again why I'm saying, like, it's going to do the round. Like, it kind of does what's on the tin.
Right.
I think that again, they should have paired it with a little better AP round. Had you done a little better bullet with that, we'd be talking. But again, it's kind of, I think, yet to be determined what the main bullet's going to be that they're loading. So,
right.
time will tell. But I sure as shit wouldn't want to catch one in a level 4. I mean, wouldn't want to catch one at all. But
suboptimal to say the least. And then this one is for you specifically, Blake, pertaining to the Spanish.
About the gun thing. Is that the plan for San Diego? Possibly. San Diego, I think the real plan for San Diego is going to be kind of like Escape from, it seems like that whole coast, like, is it bad to say when Iran bluffed that they were going to launch drones out? I was like, hit the West Coast. I think no one will complain.
Yeah. And then this one's a classic. I know who he's talking about, and you probably do too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep. I did read this one earlier. So
a legend in his own mind.
And there's actually quite a few good channels out there now. They're putting out excuse me, sorry guys, I don't sleep a lot anymore, so I apologize about the yawning there. That was pretty rude. There's quite a few guys that are putting out some pretty good videos on YouTube now, with even with design plans for printed firearms and things of that nature. And like, if you really want to get into it, like, there's this little known thing that the ATF hates people knowing about, but every single one of you that's a U.S. citizen listening to this video right now, excuse me, still getting over the flu. Anyway, every one of you can make 49 of any one modeled firearm a year, and then change one thing on it, make a new model, and make another 49 of them. Now, you can't sell them, but you can make them. So, like, if you want to get into 3D printing firearms and testing these things at home, you 100% legally can. Now, I would definitely talk to your local range before bringing it there if they allow those kinds of firearms. Like, there are just common sense, like, safety things you should do. But, like, if you wanted to go and buy parts kits and 3D print a lower and get the right kind of filament to do it and take the time and the education to make sure you're not going to blow your damn hand off, okay, you're legally allowed to do that. Like, hooray, freedom. Like, you should do it. Like, I think it's a great thing. It's a wonderful pursuit. In fact, I think everybody should have some kind of a machining capability in their house where they're producing some kind of Second Amendment item, because, boy, it's super, super, super hard to regulate it when we can just print them off in our basement. And to that point too, if somebody does, like, say, a local municipality does a gun buyback, take advantage of it as much as you possibly can.
Money.
3D print as many crap guns as you can and go sell them for $300 a piece, and then turn around and buy all the real guns from the people that are going to be selling them. Like,
look,
these things. This is what you're supposed to do.
I'm here to tell you, and look, I don't want this to be taken wrong, because I'm sure there's some, there's some decent sheriffs and stuff like that out there, but they're, by and large, you could take something that relatively resembles a firearm, and most patrol officers have no idea what they're looking at. Like that, and I'm not trying to be a dick about that, but when you look at some of the stuff they bring in and they do these photo ops, there's like, oh, this is a dangerous weapon. It's like, my guy, it's a piece of plumbing tube that has no functionality whatsoever. I don't care what anybody says, or the thing is so decrepit that it's probably going to kill the user before it kills anybody else. So it's like,
it's like, I actually had a phone call from the BCA about a month ago. They were looking for some oh crap, what was it they were even looking for? The flash caps of some kind, I can't remember, but there was a guy that used to have, they had like some old decrepit freaking muzzle loader that was used in the crime. Must have been a murder, because the BCA they couldn't find the musket caps, and I went on a search trying to find them for him. It was a total pain in the butt. But like, you'd be amazed at some of the stuff people do use in crimes. It's pretty wild. Zip guns and stuff. Well, what was that?
A crossbow, apparently, in I can't remember what country, but Canada. I think it's Canada.
And that's just it. If man wants to strike you down, he will find a way. Like, it doesn't have to be a boomstick, a thunder stick. It can be a crossbow. More often than not, it's a knife. Hell, it can be just a rock, the very first murder weapon, right? Like, and that's the thing that just cracks me up about the freaking government, man, is like, oh, we're going to keep you from killing each other. I don't think you are. I don't think you have any concept whatsoever of how to stop people from killing each other. In fact, you have a corner on that violence typically.
Right.
So, but I'm afraid we're heading into that kind of time right now. So batten up the hatches.
Well, there's just a couple left, Blake. I appreciate you hanging in there. This was a comment about what we were talking about, the dead internet theory, supercharged broken window fallacy.
About keeping people alive after they're dead.
Yeah, and then there's that one, and then the one, I mean, just I hate to say it this way, banger after banger. But then he rounded it off with that, and it's just like, dude, absolutely. And then the humility component, which is fantastic. But then, David also put, about how frightening it would be to raise a family in this day and age. And man, I mean, I think, so here's the way that I see it. And Blake, obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think any time that you rate, there's always going to be a potentiality or a potential risk. Now, there might be environmental factors that may heighten or lower to some degree, but it's like the world is dangerous in general, man. I mean, there's a lot that can take us out, and I count my blessings every single day I get out of bed. It's like, first off, I got out of bed and I didn't die like a chump slipping on like a freaking random banana peel, and dying from a concussion. I mean, how stupid would that be? But it's like, man, I mean, you think about all the stuff we do navigate, and then you throw a family in there. It's like, it's a sketchy world, man.
Oh, for sure it is, dude. And like, when it's our time, it's our time. I do take solace in that. I don't know when my time is, but it's already written in a book somewhere, To that point, though, I kind of freak about it, with especially how young my kids are and how screwed up this world is. It's something you can't not. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night, right?
Right.
And one of the things that I've had this talk with my wife and some of my close friends and everything is like, how do you raise good men in this world?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a challenge, and I think it's going to be one of those day by day things,
right?
I don't want to steal their innocence from them too quickly, because you need to have that time, that childhood time, right? But in the same breath, you need them to be prepared for what this world is. But how do you prepare them for what this world is without making them jaded? And it just keeps going and going and going. You can kind of chase this down. I think one of my biggest fears is you don't want to set them up to tilt at windmills. You want them to be able to understand that there are some fights worth fighting, and there's some fights that, as much as you want to fight, it's a lost cause. And having to understand to pick and choose your battles, I think, is an important thing. And hell, I don't know, I'm not a young guy necessarily anymore, but I'm a young dad, and I'm just trying to figure it out as best as I can as I go with what support network I have. And it's a challenge, because this world freaks me out for these boys. Especially with like some of what you see, these kids that are being raised right now in this generation. Like, I don't want to be mean, but they're like retarded. Like seriously, quantifiably, like they're just like, holy crap. There's second graders that don't know how to wipe their own ass. Like, how do you possibly function in a world where that's the people that are around you? Like, yeah, great, you're a king among idiots.
Yeah.
but like, what kind of future is that? So it sucks. But you know what? There you go. David just hit it on the head, man. Be a dad that is present, disciplined, and allow them to fail and succeed. He's right. Yeah. That's exactly it. Is just be there. Be as honest as you can. Like my oldest loves to read, man. That's like his jam. It will at a little under 2 years old, he'll go and sit on his little bed that he's so proud of, and he'll read he'll fake read. Obviously, he can't read yet. Well, he's getting better, but he'll read like 30 books in a row by himself. Just occupy himself. It's great. Like, I love it. I love that he loves to read already. But we do, like, before bed every single night. It's at least 15 books. But I think that's important. And I think giving them the tools is important, and letting them become who they want to be is also important. Leaving the barn door open eventually, but that will come. It's not there yet.
Well, hey, brother, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming over to have this chat with me tonight, and to go through these different topics. I mean, there's a lot there, and I'm sure that in the future we'll come back to some of these conversations. There's just so much to talk about. It's such a mess of chaotic issues, but there's it's always a pleasure to get your perspective. And if you have a couple minutes after the show, I'll chit chat with you after the outro. But you got any last?
Yeah, I want to
promotions
comment on
and
that
plugs?
last comment because I have a fun story
Yeah.
about this. You are absolutely right, Mayor. Like, I have never once baby talked to my children. I never will.
Yeah.
I've talked to them like full-fledged adults since the day they were born. And my mother-in-law came out, and oh dear God, she had cornered my oldest, like baby talking to him like ooh goo gaga and all this, and like, you've never seen a toddler like flip the bird to his grandmother. Like, he was like, "Get away from me, woman! Why are you talking to me like this?" Like, he got pissed. I mean, frigging pissed that she was talking to him like that. And I talk about, like, everyone he deals with, we talk to him as an adult. Like, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but there's a reason he knows as many words as he has. There's a reason he's already at the library. He's read 1,000 of their books under 2 years old. He's got like a little plaque for it already. It's ridiculous. Like, this kid has just he's insatiable when it comes to reading. I've read every book in our library, like, I don't know how many times to him. Like, I'm getting sick of it, but that you can't, right? Like, you gotta, like, even if it's the Yellow Diggy 3,000 times in a row, you better make it sell it just as exciting as the first time you read it.
Right.
Like, they're paying attention to you. They want to know, do you like me? Right. And quite frankly, I love my boys. I don't want to do anything but hang out with them all the time. So, okay, now I'm like way off in the weeds and like, I love being a dad.
No, dude, it's great.
I need to cook. I'm starving and like, I gotta piss like a racehorse. So
shameless plug, if any.
Shameless plug. Do more brass, shoot more guns, buy stuff from me. I got body armor. I got trigger jobs. I got accuratizing. I like whatever you need. We got it. Like, you want grenades? I can't get them, but I can make you feel like you might have got them. I mean, I probably can, but it's illegal as hell. So.
And if you're cool with it, man, I'll throw your. I can throw your. Do you have your website up yet again?
No, gosh, the website. Don't even get me started with that. I've got to go through this year and get my website up and running. If you go there right now, I'm pretty sure some Chinese gambling company somehow bought my domain.
We can. We'll figure out a way to try and help drive business over your way, bro.
Yeah, no, that's great. But like, out of all seriousness, and I don't really care if you buy from me or from somebody else, but like, if you are in the market for what my trade has deployed, like, buy quality if you can, educate yourself. Like, what I deal with is either things that put food on your family's table or things that protect your family. And I'm a firm believer in having it work properly, having it be high quality if possible. Save if you need to. Like, let's not buy the high point if possible. Like, let's get you into something decent, but let's make sure what you have you can rely on so that you can trust your life to your equipment. And like, hey, listen, if you trust us to get your equipment up and running, we'd love to help you out. But find somebody that's knowledgeable that can assist you in what it is, and make sure your gear is up to snuff, because you may rely on it. And that doesn't necessarily going to mean you're going to rely on it on a 2A range, but it might mean you rely on it at a 400-yard shot on that animal you need to put in the ground because it's the last thing you've seen in a month and you need to feed your family. Again, that's pretty out there, but hey, the world can fall apart relatively rapidly.
Well said, brother. Well, hey, thank you, Blake. And for all of you wonderful people, I'm going to hit some outro music and come see me next. Well, I might do another one next Thursday. We'll see. I will keep you guys up to date. I'll throw a post down in the post area of YouTube and let you know kind of what the game plan for next week is going to be. But thank you, each and every one of you, for coming over to the Sentinels of Liberty this evening. I appreciate you coming and supporting me, coming and seeing my awesome guest Blake and all the knowledge and all of the things that he has to disperse and diffuse amongst all of you cool and wonderful people. And we will see you guys and gals on the next one. Thank you once again.